Carl Jung discovered something that would terrify most psychologists today. There exists a psychological type so rare, so evolutionarily advanced, that fewer than 2% of the human population possesses it. And here's the truth that connects directly to you. If you identify as an empath, you are statistically far more likely to be part of this 2%. But this isn't a gift wrapped in a bow. It's a curse disguised as a superpower. Jung called this the differentiated consciousness, a level of psychological development where the individual has integrated what he termed the transcendent function. This is the ability to hold opposing truths simultaneously, to see beyond the binary thinking that traps most of humanity. And empaths, true empaths, naturally possess this architecture because you've spent your entire life navigating the impossible task of feeling your emotions and everyone else's at the same time. You've been told your whole life that being an empath means you feel too much. That's not the whole truth. What Jung discovered is that empaths with this rare psychological type don't just feel more. You process reality through an entirely different operating system. While others experience life in 2 dimensions, you're living in 4. You see the shadow behind every smile, the fear behind every aggressive word, the childhood wound driving every adult behavior. But here's where it gets dangerous. This level of perception comes with what Jung called the burden of consciousness. You cannot unsee what you've seen. You cannot unfeel what you've felt. Once you've awakened to this level of awareness, there is no going back to the comfortable ignorance that most people call normal life. You become a permanent outsider, watching humanity through a glass that everyone else mistakes for a mirror. In his private journals, Jung wrote about a specific subset of his patients, highly sensitive individuals who could perceive the collective unconscious as easily as others perceive the weather. He noted that these people shared 8 unmistakable characteristics, 8 psychological markers that separated them from even other sensitive people. And he warned that without proper understanding and integration, these individuals would either become the healers of humanity or destroy themselves trying. If you've ever walked into a room and felt physically sick from the unspoken tension, if you've ever looked at a stranger and known their life story before they spoke, if you've ever felt the weight of humanity's suffering pressing down on your chest in the middle of the night, you need to hear what comes next. Because you're not broken, oversensitive, or crazy. You're operating with hardware that most people don't have, and it's time you learned how to use it without it destroying you. Today, we're going to walk through the 8 definitive signs that you possess this rare psychological architecture. More importantly, we're going to explore why Jung believed you are both humanity's greatest hope and its most vulnerable casualties. Because the truth is, the world needs you. But first, you need to understand what you actually are. The first sign that you possess this rare psychological type is what Jung termed affective resonance at unusual depth. But let's translate that from academic language into your lived experience. You don't just feel emotions, you experience them as complete sensory landscapes with their own gravity, color, and architecture. When a normal person feels sadness, it's like watching rain through a window. When you feel sadness, you are the rain, the window, the person watching, and the ground receiving the water all at once. This isn't poetic exaggeration. This is your neurology functioning at a resolution that borders on the supernatural. Jung observed this phenomenon in his most sensitive patients and realized something that modern psychology still refuses to fully accept. This depth is not a disorder. It's an evolutionary adaptation. You are picking up on frequencies in the human experience that others are biologically deaf to. Think of it like this. Most people have AM radio. You have a satellite receiver that picks up transmissions from the other side of the planet. Here's where it gets specific. You've had this experience. Someone is telling you a story, smiling, using all the right words, and everyone around you is laughing and engaged, but you feel nauseous. There's a cold stone in your stomach. You know with cellular certainty that this person is lying, not about the facts, but about their emotional reality. They're performing, and you're the only one who can see the strings. This is because you're not just listening to their words. Your system is reading micro-expressions that last 25th of a second, processing vocal tone variations measured in hertz, detecting pheromonal signals that communicate fear or deception, and cross-referencing all of this data against your vast internal database of human behavioral patterns. This happens in milliseconds, completely unconscious, and presents itself to you as a gut feeling. But here's the curse Jung warned about. This makes you dangerous to people who live in denial. Your very presence demands authenticity. You are a walking lie detector test that people never agreed to take. This is why certain individuals dislike you instantly, without logical reason. They're not responding to anything you said or did. They're responding to the fact that you see them, truly see them. And for someone whose entire identity is built on a carefully constructed mask, being seen is the most threatening experience imaginable. You probably also noticed that you can't watch violent movies or the news without feeling physically ill. That's not weakness. That's your mirror neurons firing at an intensity that creates actual somatic responses. You're not watching violence. Your body believes it's experiencing violence. The emotional information enters your system as if it's happening to you directly. This level of sensitivity means you're carrying an enormous amount of unprocessed emotional data every single day. Data that other people generate and you absorb. And if you don't learn to discharge this energy, it will calcify inside you and present as anxiety, depression, or chronic fatigue. This isn't mental illness. This is toxic empathy poisoning. The second sign is perhaps the most socially dangerous. You possess what Jung called active philosophical temperament, an absolute inability to accept the world as it's presented to you. This isn't rebelliousness for its own sake. This is a fundamental hardwiring that makes it psychologically impossible for you to swallow the pill of consensus reality. From childhood, you were that kid, the one who frustrated every teacher with the question, "But why?" And you weren't asking about mechanics. You were asking about meaning. Why do we follow these rules? Why do we pretend this matters? Why does everyone agree to participate in systems that cause suffering? While other children colored inside the lines, you were questioning why the lines existed in the first place. Jung noticed that his patients with this rare type shared a specific kind of suffering. They were allergic to bullshit. Not just lies, but the entire ecosystem of social pretending that holds civilization together. You physically cannot engage in small talk without feeling your soul dying. You cannot participate in office politics without wanting to scream. You cannot watch people chase status symbols without feeling a deep existential recoil. This makes you a corporate nightmare. You're the person in the meeting who points out that the profitable plan is unethical. You're the family member who brings up the secrets everyone agreed to never mention. You're the friend who asks, "But are you actually happy?" when everyone else is just liking Instagram posts. You are, in Jung's words, the thorn in the side of collective consciousness. But here's what you need to understand. This dissatisfaction is not a character flaw. It is your fuel. It is the sacred fire that drives the process Jung called individuation, the psychological journey of becoming a whole, authentic individual, separate from the herd. Most people never even begin this journey because it's too terrifying. You can't avoid it. Your system rejects the alternative. The danger here is what Jung termed spiritual starvation masquerading as depression. You've probably been prescribed medication for depression when what you actually have is a crisis of meaning. Your soul is sending you emergency signals. This life is not aligned with your truth. This job is killing you. This relationship is a lie. These goals are not actually yours. Western medicine tries to medicate away the alarm instead of addressing why the alarm is ringing. They want to turn down your sensitivity so you can tolerate a soul-crushing existence. But you cannot be medicated into accepting a life that violates your core architecture. The depression won't lift until you start building a life that your soul can actually inhabit. Here's the hard truth. You will never be satisfied with a comfortable lie. You will always choose a difficult truth. This means your life path will be harder, lonelier, and more uncertain than the paths available to people who can just go with the flow. But it also means your life will be real. And for someone with your psychological structure, a real life of struggle is infinitely preferable to a fake life of comfort. The third sign is conscious autonomy, developed to an extreme degree, what Jung metaphorically called the wolf archetype. You discovered very early, probably before age 10, that the price of belonging to the pack was the amputation of your true self. And you made a choice that most people are too terrified to make. You chose yourself. This doesn't mean you're antisocial. In fact, you probably crave connection more intensely than most people, because you understand how rare true connection actually is. But you developed a non-negotiable principle. You would rather be completely alone than be in any relationship, friendship, romantic, professional, that requires you to betray your own nature. You've walked away from friendships that others would have kept because you couldn't tolerate the slow suffocation of pretending. You've left jobs that paid well because the spiritual cost was too high. You've ended relationships with people you loved because they needed you to be smaller than you are. And every time you made these choices, people called you difficult, unrealistic, or self-sabotaging. But Jung understood what they don't. You have built an internal ecosystem that sustains you. You have developed what he called the individuated self, a psychological structure that generates its own meaning, validation, and purpose from within, rather than drawing it from external sources. This is psychological adulthood. Most people never achieve it. They remain dependent on the tribe for their sense of identity their entire lives. Your self-reliance intimidates people because it mirrors back to them their own dependence. When they see you comfortable in solitude, that would drive them insane. When they watch you make choices based on internal values rather than external approval, it confronts them with their own psychological imprisonment. So they attack your autonomy, calling it arrogance or coldness when really they're just projecting their fear of freedom. But Jung issued a specific warning to individuals with this level of autonomy. Independence can curdle into isolation. If you build the walls too high, if you retreat too far into your fortress of solitude, you risk becoming what he called the sterile hermit, someone who has found truth but has no one to share it with, rendering the truth meaningless. The goal is not to become a permanent exile. The goal is to leave the tribe, go into the wilderness, face the darkness, integrate the shadow, discover your authentic self, and then return to the village to share what you've learned. You have to complete the hero's journey. Too many people with your type get stuck in the middle chapter, living in permanent exile, mistaking isolation for enlightenment. You are not meant to spend your life alone. You are meant to find the others, the 2% who speak your language, the ones who don't need you to translate your soul into digestible pieces, the ones who can hold the intensity of your presence without flinching. They exist. They're looking for you just as desperately as you're looking for them. But you'll never find them if you're hiding in a cave, convinced that connection is impossible. The fourth sign is the one that makes you seem almost supernatural to others. You possess what Jung called highly developed intuitive function, or perception via the unconscious. This is not mysticism. This is your brain operating as a supercomputer that processes millions of data points simultaneously and delivers the conclusion as a flash of knowing. You know things before they happen. You meet someone new and immediately understand their childhood wound, their deepest fear, and exactly how they're going to betray you. And you're right. You walk into a business meeting and know the deal will fall through before anyone sits down. You sense your friend's relationship is ending 3 months before they announce the breakup. This isn't magic. This is pattern recognition operating at a level that appears indistinguishable from precognition. Jung explained this through his concept of the collective unconscious. You're not just processing the individual data in front of you. You're accessing archetypal patterns that have played out millions of times throughout human history. When you meet that charismatic person who everyone loves but you immediately distrust, you're not being judgmental. You're recognizing the trickster archetype. Your unconscious has cataloged thousands of iterations of this pattern and is warning you. But here's the curse. This is the Cassandra complex in its purest form. You see the car crash coming, you warn everyone in the vehicle, and they tell you you're being negative. Then the crash happens exactly as you predicted, and instead of apologizing, they resent you for being right. Because your accuracy reminds them that they ignored their own intuition. Your correctness is a mirror reflecting their wrongness. This prophetic quality also creates a unique form of suffering. You don't live in the present moment the way others do. You're simultaneously existing in 3 timelines: the past that created this moment, the present that's unfolding, and the future that this present is creating. While others are reacting to what's happening now, you're already grieving or celebrating what will happen next. This makes you an exceptional strategist, but a terrible optimist. You see the structural flaws in every plan. You anticipate the betrayal before the loyalty is even established. You're preparing for the ending during the beginning. This capacity has probably saved you from disasters others walked right into, but it's also prevented you from fully surrendering to joy because you can see joy's expiration date. Jung worked with many patients who had this gift, and he noticed they all shared a specific anxiety: the fear that they're manufacturing these premonitions, that their intuition is actually paranoia. Let me be clear. If your predictions consistently come true, if people regularly come back to you months later saying you were right, If you have a documented history of knowing things you had no logical way of knowing, then your intuition is not paranoia. It's a highly sophisticated early warning system. The challenge is learning to trust it while not becoming enslaved to it. You must learn to hold your intuitive knowing lightly, to act on it when necessary, but not to let it rob you of experiencing the present moment fully. The fifth sign connects directly to the sixth, so we'll explore them together because they form a unified psychological pattern. You have an insatiable hunger for existential meaning combined with a constitutional inability to stay in any life stage, identity, or belief system once you've outgrown it. Jung famously observed that among all his patients over 35, not one had a problem that wasn't fundamentally spiritual, a disconnection from what he called the numinous, the sense of connection to something infinite. For you, this isn't a midlife realization. This has been your primary wound since adolescence. A life without depth feels like suffocation. You cannot just exist. You must matter. This is why you can't do surface-level work, even if it pays well. Why you can't maintain relationships built on convenience rather than soul resonance. Why you get physically ill when your days are filled with meaningless tasks. Your body rejects inauthenticity the way an immune system rejects a virus. The depression, the fatigue, the mysterious illnesses that doctors can't diagnose. These are often spiritual allergies to a life that's misaligned with your purpose. But here's where it gets complicated. The moment you find meaning, the moment you build an identity around a belief system, a career, or a relationship, you begin to outgrow it. This is the cycle of metamorphosis Jung identified in individuating personalities. You are a creature that must continuously shed skins. What saved you yesterday will suffocate you tomorrow. You've experienced this repeatedly. The spiritual practice that felt like coming home becomes empty ritual. The job you were passionate about becomes a prison. The relationship you thought was your forever person suddenly feels like a beautiful cage, and you're left with the horrifying question, am I incapable of commitment? Or am I just evolving faster than my circumstances can accommodate? The answer is the latter. You're not fickle, you're alchemical. Your psychological structure is designed for transformation. Jung called this the spiral path of individuation. You don't evolve in a straight line. You circle back to the same lessons at deeper levels, integrating more shadow, accessing more truth, becoming more whole with each revolution. But this gift comes with profound loneliness. You've probably lost friends who accused you of changing, as if personal growth is a betrayal. You've left communities that once felt like home because you could no longer pretend to fit in the box they built around you. You've endured the guilt of outgrowing people you still love, knowing that your expansion triggers their stagnation. Here's what Jung understood that most people don't. You cannot save others by staying small. Your evolution is not a judgment of their choice to stay the same. You must give yourself permission to grow even when it means growing away from people you care about. The right people will grow with you or cheer you on from a distance. The wrong people will punish you for your transformation and demand you shrink back down to the size that made them comfortable. Your metamorphosis is not optional. It's your biological imperative. The seventh sign reveals why your life has felt so heavy. You are what Jung called a transformational catalyst. Your presence doesn't just impact people. It fundamentally alters them. You've noticed that strangers confess their deepest secrets to you within minutes. That people cry in your presence without understanding why. That conversations with you leave people changed in ways they can't articulate. This happens because you naturally hold what Jung termed temenos, sacred space. Your lack of judgment, your capacity for depth, and your ability to see people's souls beneath their masks creates a psychological vacuum. And nature abhors a vacuum. The truth gets pulled out of people in your presence, whether they intended to share it or not. You are a mirror, but not the kind that reflects what people want to see. You reflect what they actually are, their wounds, their potential, their self-deceptions, their unlived lives. This is a profound gift to humanity, but it's also the most dangerous aspect of your psychology for your own survival. Because you are an open channel, you attract everyone who is broken, lost, and refusing to do their own healing work. Narcissists are drawn to you like sharks to blood because your empathy is the perfect fuel for their empty core. Energy vampires sense that you have what they lack, authentic aliveness, and they attach themselves to you, hoping to siphon your vitality. Jung specifically warned empaths with your psychological structure about psychic infection, absorbing the unconscious emotional debris of others until you become sick with their toxicity. You must learn that compassion without boundaries isn't noble. It's self-destruction. Your empathy requires gates, not just open doors. This connects directly to the eighth and final sign. You have felt, since childhood, a pull toward an unnamed destiny. Jung called this the teleological nature of the psyche, the idea that we are not just pushed by our past trauma, but pulled by our future purpose. You have always known you're here for a specific reason, even though you cannot name it. This isn't delusion. This is your unconscious mind sensing the pattern trying to emerge through your life. You feel it as restlessness, as holy discontent, as a voice whispering, "You are made for something more than this." The problem is that your purpose is usually ahead of its time, so there's no roadmap. You're cutting a path through jungle while everyone else drives on the highway. This creates chronic doubt. Am I crazy? Am I wasting my life chasing something that doesn't exist? Jung would tell you, the anxiety you feel is the bowstring being pulled back before the arrow is released. You are in the preparation phase. The purpose cannot fully reveal itself until you've been forged in the fire of enough transformation to hold it. Your job right now isn't to have all the answers. Your job is to keep saying yes to your evolution, to keep shedding the skins that no longer fit, to keep showing up for your own becoming. The destination will reveal itself when you're ready to arrive. Now we arrive at the dangerous part. Jung identified 3 specific shadow patterns that hunt people with your psychological structure. If you don't integrate these shadows, they will consume you from within, and all your gifts will become weapons you use against yourself. The first shadow is inflation, the trap of spiritual superiority. Because you see more than others, because you understand patterns they're blind to, it's seductively easy to fall into the belief that you're more evolved, more awakened, more enlightened. This separates you from humanity and transforms your gift into a prison of isolation. Remember, understanding the game doesn't make you better than the players. It gives you a different role. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. Your consciousness is not a badge of honor. It's a responsibility. The second shadow is the martyr complex. Because you feel the world's pain so acutely, you may decide it's your job to absorb everyone's suffering. You become the sponge for your family's toxicity, your workplace's dysfunction, your friends' unprocessed trauma. You sacrifice your health, your joy, your dreams on the altar of helping others. Jung was explicit about this. If you cannot help yourself, you cannot help anyone. Self-sacrifice without self-preservation is not compassion. It's slow suicide. You must learn to be selfish in the service of your own survival, because a depleted healer heals no one. The third shadow is paralysis through over-analysis. You see so many angles, so many possibilities, so many potential outcomes that you become frozen. You spend years studying, thinking, planning, preparing, but never actually doing. You build magnificent castles in the clouds of your imagination while your physical life crumbles. Jung emphasized that individuation must be lived, not just contemplated. Your insights mean nothing if they remain trapped in your head. You must drag your truth down from the heavens and plant it in the dirt of reality. You must take imperfect action. You must risk being wrong. You must enter the arena. So where do you go from here? First, stop fighting against your nature. Stop apologizing for your intensity. Stop trying to be less so others can be comfortable. Your sensitivity is not a bug in your programming. It's the feature that makes you irreplaceable. Second, find the others. You cannot walk this path alone. There are people who speak your language, who can hold your depth, who won't flinch at your truth. They're rare, but they exist. Build your tribe intentionally. Third, protect your energy as if your life depends on it, because it does. Learn to say no. Build boundaries. Discharge the emotional data you absorb daily. Ground yourself in physical practices. Your empathy is a sacred gift, but it requires maintenance. The world is in a crisis of consciousness right now. We're drowning in information but starving for wisdom. We have more connection than ever, but we've never been more lonely. The world doesn't need more people who fit in. It has plenty of those. The world needs you, exactly as you are, complicated, intense, and real. I want to hear your story. Which of these 8 signs hit you the hardest? Was it the burden of seeing too much, the loneliness of constant transformation, or the weight of an unnamed destiny? Drop a comment below. Your experience might be exactly what another person needs to hear today to realize they're not alone in this. And if you found value in this exploration of Jung's work, If something here resonated in your bones, consider subscribing. Not because I'm asking you to, but because you deserve to surround yourself with content that speaks to the depth you live at. There are more people like you out there than you think. Let's find each other. There's another video you need to see next. It's about the specific strategies Jung taught for protecting your empathic gift from those who would drain it. Check the description below. This is the practical survival guide for everything we just discussed. You're not broken. You're not too much. You're just operating on hardware that most people don't have. And now you know what that means.